we extend heartful greeting to all our esteemed guests joining us from various corners of the globe for yet another thrilling seminar. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all on ninth seminar in the third edition of the seminar series on the digital future for business and society, emerging perspective on the metaverse. I, Dr. Vinod Kumar from Symbiosis Institute of Business Management, Pune, and Dr. Anabel from University of London are truly honored and privileged to lead this exciting event as moderators. This seminar series is hosted jointly by Professor Yogesh Dwivedi, who is Professor of Digital Marketing and Innovations and Founding Director of Digital Future for Sustainable Business and Society Research Group at School of Management, Swansea University, Wales, UK. Next, we have Dr. Laurie Hughes. He is Senior Lecturer within Strategic Operation Group and founding member of the Digital Future for Sustainable Business and Society Research Group at School of Management, Swansea University, Wales, UK. And we also have Professor Raman. He is currently Director, Symbiosis Institute of Business Management, Pune, Dean, Faculty of Management, Symbiosis International Deemed University, Director, Strategy and Development, Symbiosis Group. Our entire seminar series is jointly supported by Digital Marketing and Analytics SIG Academy of Marketing, Green Nobel IAE Graduate School of Management, a Green Nobel INP School of the University of Green Nobel Alps, the E-Business and E-Government SIG Academy of Management, the UK Academy for Information Systems UK AIS. To tell you something very briefly about the seminar series, eminent emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, blockchain, Internet of Things, and the metaverse undoubtedly offer transformative potential for augmentation and potential replacement of human performed tasks and activities within a wide range of industrial, intellectual, and social applications. The impact and widespread adoption of these technologies is likely to be transformational within sectors ranging from agriculture, finance, healthcare, manufacturing, retail, supply chain, logistics, and utilities. This seminar series on the digital future for business and society, emerging perspective on the metaverse, will present various perspectives from a number of leading expert speakers to highlight opportunities and challenges posed by rapid emergence of metaverse. This seminar series will not only offer a timely and thought-provoking insight into the metaverse, but also its impact on the future of business management and societal factors impacted by growth, direction, and widespread adoption of this new immersive technology. Today, we are incredibly fortunate to have esteemed presence of Professor Varsha Jain, an eminent researcher, who will grace the event with her insights on the topic opportunity and challenges of the metaverse in marketing. To tell you something about our speaker of the day, Professor Varsha Jain is AGK Chair, Professor of Marketing and co-chairperson of the doctoral program and research at MICA, Ahmedabad, India. She is an associate editor at the Journal of Consumer Behavior and received her Best Associate Editor Award from Journal of Consumer Behavior in 2022. Many congratulations, ma'am, for this. She is an editorial board member at the International Journal of Information Management, Journal of Advertising Research, and Journal of Business Research, and co-track chairperson advertising at Academy of Marketing Science Conference USA, the annual conference 2023. She is vice chair of International Relations, Higher Education, Special Interest Group, and American Marketing Association USA. She has authored more than 120 publications, including multiple papers in A-Star and A journals. Professor Jain is recipient of more than 23 international and national awards and gold medal in scholarship. In her research career, she is visiting guest at Emory Business School, Atlanta, USA, visiting scholar at Greenwich University, London, and Medill School, Northwestern University, USA. Her research interests are ABCD, which is very interesting. It's abbreviated as ABCD: A for advertising, B for branding, C for consumer behavior, and D for digital. Primarily immersive technologies including AI, AR, VR, and Metaverse. She is co-editor for special issues related to AI, social media influences, and Metaverse for Journal of Consumer Behavior, which is due by next year. You can follow for the same. She has co-authored books with Professor Jagdish Sheth and Professor Don Chulz, including Consumer Behavior a Digital Native. She is now working on international edition of a consumer behavior book in digital context. AI as the next frontier for personalized engagement for services, customer relationship management for digital context with Professor Jagdish Sheth, and purpose-driven branding and other branding books with Professor David Acker, and another book on qualitative research method in digital age, Macmillan, UK. So that is quite impressive, ma'am, and a very warm welcome to you, Professor Jain. So without any further ado, I kindly request you to take over and address our esteemed audience for today. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us from different parts of the world. Good evening to the folks from India and wherever you are, hello, because I'm not sure about the time zone. But thank you so much for making the efforts and taking the time out for the session. Thank you so much, Symbiosis Group, for your kind words as well as the invitation. I am really grateful to be here. And today, as we were discussing about the digital age, this is the time to talk about Metaverse. And Metaverse has got a lot of, transformations into business, and especially marketing, across all the three categories of the brands and the categories of business under which we are going to talk. So it could be about any sector that we deal into, fashion, or, if it is luxury, it's health, or if it is lifestyle, everything has been transformed with Metaverse. Some brands, it's working, some brands not working. Where it is working, I think it's a lot of research which is needed. And marketing being an interdisciplinary aspect, you can pull in a lot of stuff from IS, from sociology, from psychology, and try to figure out that what's going on and what would be the best strategy for the companies to develop their strategy. So with that, I think Dr. Kumar mentioned that we're doing a special issue for JCB. So I'm sure that you all are very much interested into Metaverse. I would be happy to see your submissions at JCB because the call for papers are out and it is due by December this year. So with that, let me explain more nuances about Metaverse and how it is spanning into the marketing area. So let me share my screen and allow me a minute to share the sound as well, because I think I'll have the video. Yeah. So,
it's visible, ma'am.
Okay, so as I was mentioning that these are the opportunities that we're talking about in terms of the challenges, opportunities that can span into the Metaverse world, because this world is very different. First of all, as researchers, as scholars, we need to understand what the world is all about, what are the differences, what are the similarities, and then probably try to make an impact with your work. And with the marketing orientation, of course, this is the whole idea which I'm going to talk about. So I think Dr. Kumar already mentioned about my affiliations, but primarily I work into the area of digital marketing because everything ties around it. If I have to summarize my entire work and affiliations, whatever I do with my journals and special issues, it's all about digital. The whole idea is why digital and social media, because the entire world, primarily after COVID, has changed. So whatever we used to call it as a part of marketing, which was digital, now it has become the core of marketing, because without digital it's very difficult to sustain. And the reason is that because the consumers are on those platforms. So wherever your consumers are, the marketers have to align their thought processes and campaigns and content where the consumers are to make more sense. And so it's more co-created world, it is more interactive world, it is more a world where consumer empowerment is important, their voices are important. So with that, this is the kind of work that we keep doing. Now, if I start about how Metaverse has spanned out, so primarily it is talking about the virtual reality, augmented reality, what are the different spaces under which you work in, and why it has become so important because of the experience. So the experience plays a very important role here, because all the work that we have been doing into CB or marketing advertising, the common thread which I can tell you is coming out is about experience. No matter what you do, where you do, whether it is augmented reality or virtual reality, all the papers that we recently published within this year itself, like 8 or 9 across the journals, the common thread is about experience. And they really have to immerse themselves into the experience and make it more interactive, so that, you know, the marketeer's role is what? So a lot of industry folks and a lot of people across the globe also keep asking me that you always talk about it, but then what will be our role if everything is given to the users? Then in that case, I always say that the marketeer role in the digital age, primarily when you're talking about metaverse as well, is about an enabler. So you enable the environment, you ensure that their voices are being heard, they are able to co-create with you as volunteers, because what they feel, what they relate, what they are connecting with the emotions is very important to be captured by the marketers. So I think the users, and I'm not even calling it as consumers, because I think IS has given us more wide term to be used, which is user, because I don't know whether it would be a consumer or a customer or maybe someone else or prospective customers. We have so many categories under which we work in marketing, but it could be a user, to be very simplistic. And it provides a very diverse platform which has very different type of customized avatars. And here is an interesting story about it, because one story which is coming out again from the work that we've been doing is that I have the avatars on Metaverse at different places in the digital space, because I'm not able to portray what I am in the real world, which is true. For instance, when we were doing a research on housewives in India, which is a very patriarchal system, and they have been suppressed of exposing their voices and talking about their feelings and cognition, they all said that we have all these avatars coming up in these spaces of metaverse because they derive pleasure. And the reason is that their social needs are also being covered by these platforms. And so it means that the avatars which have been developed by different users have different objectives. So it could be that what I'm not able to fulfill in my real world, I'm able to capture that in the metaverse. And then we also found through Gen Y that they said that no, that is also not true. Our studies found that, okay, whatever we are, we portray the same avatar when we go in metaverse. So those are certain aspects, contradictory sometimes because the demographics are different. And it is not only about demographics, because now in metaverse world, it is more about lifestyle. It is about psychographics. So you actually develop the behavioral segmentation to understand what is the user trait emerging from it, because it's quite contextual. A person who is wanting a particular set of product right now, which is for India, for instance, evening time on a weekday would be very different for the same user or a person or a consumer on a weekend morning. So the personas are changing. So when the personas change, you need to customize. Now, the technology plays an important role. When you are on metaverse, these all things becomes very important. And we talk about Second Life, and we talk about so many other aspects where the brands like, Revlon has already been using it. And there are a bunch of other brands who have been using Second Life a lot, because again, it reflects what people want to see themselves. And as a brand, you amplify that. So with that, I just wanted to show you one video, which is going to take you to the Metaverse world to talk about how we are talking.
Some people say the Metaverse will only be virtual. But one day, this lecture hall will be made of code. And though they're virtual students, what they'll learn together is real. A surgeon will be able to practice as many times as needed in the Metaverse before laying her hands on a real patient. Being able to explore a spacecraft is one thing, but the Metaverse will let us go farther than any rocket can take us. In the future, students will be able to take a field trip to ancient Rome. And young artists can learn from a masterpiece. Farmers will one day use augmented reality to help ensure the best yields. And urban planners will be able to model traffic solutions to help decrease commute times. So while the Metaverse may be virtual, the impact will be real.
So this is the whole idea of Metaverse, which means that what we were not able to do earlier, now we will be able to do it very seamlessly. And I'm sure there are a lot of students who will be excited to see that how it is going to transform the learning as well. So, Metaverse is going to transform everything as we move ahead. So what it is exactly, it's basically an immersive 3D virtual world where we talk about the users, as I mentioned, the different aspects of a digital platform that merges from the physical world, and where people can actually shop, work, play, learn, anything which you can do. And the whole idea we're actually about to submit a paper on Metaverse, where we did the field experiment, and we found that it's about the social presence that enhances the experience into Metaverse, which was not there in other technologies. So why are we discussing so much and why it is so important for marketing? So if you look at the figures, it's like skyrocketing figures which we see. And even in 2027, it is going to span out. But the spanning out of the growth and the figures that you see on the slide is also telling us that is that about a particular set of people, as I was mentioning, because every day we also get the news along with the numbers to say that Metaverse is not working, or those companies are not ready to invest in it. And the reason is that because there are a set of people who are immersing into it, and there are a set of people who are away from it. For example, if you talk about Gen X, traditionalist, and all those category of demographics that we have in the world, they are not so much into Metaverse, which they should be. But Gen Z is primarily into that world because that's how they grow up and that's how they are being oriented towards technology. So it's very easy for them to get into Metaverse. And so the whole idea about marketing and branding is that only for the awareness, or you can feel the brands can give you vicarious pleasure. Now that is something which is quite interesting, because what has happened over a period of time is that I don't want to experience everything by myself. And that is where the Gen Y and Gen Z works, which says that if someone else is doing it, maybe in a virtual world, I don't mind getting that experience, which is where they get the vicarious pleasure to be part of that entire, journey. So this is again going to tell you what exactly I wanted to say with some videos, which are very short videos, which I'm going to play so that you understand what I'm saying. So I'm playing that for you now. So the whole idea which I wanted to tell you is that Metaverse is about immersion. Metaverse is also about gamification, where all the brands and the marketeers, they're actually investing a lot, because while you're playing the game, you actually immerse with the entire setup, which might be done by the brands, and it takes you to a different world altogether. So that is the whole orientation, and you saw the other aspects which I already spoke about, which is about shopping and other aspects which are very important in Metaverse. So in Metaverse, as I mentioned earlier, it's an amalgamation of the brands and the users, consumers, and other stakeholders. That are brighter sides, that are the darker side, and it's all aspects of marketing. If you see on the slide, I've tried to cover everything that we do in marketing, which includes CB, which includes digital marketing, advertising, services as well, and hospitality. And the reason is that because services itself is changing a lot. And I was telling my students in India and outside as well, I keep saying this, is the differentiation point. When I was at Northwestern as a visiting scholar, we did a longitudinal study and for 20 years across all the sectors. And what was interesting was that the brand loyalty and the point of differentiation is not being seen across the products and the brands. So what is going to work in future then? It's all about the service which you're offering and the kind of connect that you have with your consumers that is going to help you to take into the leap of differentiation. Now, what does that mean and how does that connect with Metaverse? It actually helps us to understand that how important Metaverse is even to deliver the service and also to make a point of differentiation. Because if you are the same brand that others are, consumers may not select you because there are wider options. Look at the options that we have, even for a small product like a shampoo, right? We have like 15, 20 products, 15, 20 brands, different categories, and so difficult to make a choice. But then if somebody comes and gives you a personalized solutions and provide you more better results, that's where you are able to connect with that brand very easily, because it is not about providing the information now. It is about providing the right, relevant, personalized information, which is contextual in nature, which means that we have to use a lot of Metaverse and AI in order to reach out to those people, because every time it's very different. Even for advertising at JAR, when we get the papers, we are emphasizing on Metaverse and AI because it is transforming the entire world of advertising and content creation. So that is something which is very important. Now, if I have to tell you what are the opportunities and the challenges, as I said earlier, is the immersion, is the experience that people want to pay for. And the good part is people are ready to pay higher amount of money, even in the Asian and emerging markets, where it was said earlier, including my own papers 12 years ago, that it is about price consciousness. But now we talk about value consciousness, because all the people have scaled up and they are talking about that I can pay higher, but then you provide me the experience. And they also have global orientation, which means that while, as I showed you in the video, while you are in any part of the world, you can experience it through Metaverse. So that is something which is quite interesting. And as I spoke about advertising, it provides a very different platform for all the advertisers and marketeers. Again, the whole idea is about personalization. And here I also wanted to mention that there are a lot of opportunities which we talk about the communities. As you saw in the video, NFTs are coming out in a big way, and social media influencers. I think that is something which is quite interesting. Since a long time, we are talking about, celebrities and celebrity influencers and macro influencers whom we know. But now what we have found in our studies is more relatability is being developed through micro and nano influencers, because people can relate with them quickly. That's how you will see the avatars in the metaverse as well. So those are the opportunities which have come up. Now, the challenge is that every user has got their social background and cultural background and their preferences, and there is always a debate which is going on in the entire world, including what should be personalized and how much should be personalized so that you don't cross the line of privacy for the users. I think that's very important, because while I was in the US in the month of April as well, there was a lot of discussion even at AMS, AMA, every time we discussed that, where is that threshold for the marketers to say that, okay, this is where it has to stop. And I think that threshold, what after a lot of discussions, debates, and research, which we've been constantly doing into different formats, including Metaverse, what we found is determined by the user. Now, the user is having those social traits or cultural traits, and they come from different backgrounds. That plays a very important role while you're determining what needs to be personalized and how much needs to be personalized, because the empowerment is to be given to the user. So that's how the metaverse also works. And the content has to be, of course, moderated. You need to work on the image. But the point is that, as I was telling you at the beginning, how much it is adapted and how much people are using it. And the good part over here is that a lot of people who are not able to afford the brands, for example, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, all these brands, they're able to consume those brands in Metaverse because it's affordable for them. Now, the whole point is that how that affects the brands. It actually, once you are being exposed to the brand, then you always want those brands in the real world. For example, one of my students, she actually submitted a thesis on augmented reality. And there she found that people who were actually, specifically that was a women's study, and people who were not using the beauty care products, when they started using it in metaverse and augmented reality, they actually went online and purchased those products. Now, that is where the marketers want to have the real action in the business. And I think metaverse, augmented reality, and virtual realities are enabling those processes to happen. Because if you're able to convert the non-user to a user, I mean, that is an excellent marketing opportunity for any business in the world. So I think that is where it is right now. And I'm going to put some of the questions in the slide, as you would see, because I'm assuming that a lot of people might have the curiosity to pick it up and maybe roll it out in their research papers or thesis or maybe their projects. And one of the area is that how do these organizations are offering and what is the ROI for it? How do we understand the content consumption of it? And what is something on metaverse which we believe in? What is the context of gamification? So here, let me summarize in a few sentences for you what is going on in metaverses. As you see, even on the visuals which I have presented, you actually immerse into those areas, start playing, start involving yourself, your engagement is increased, and you get involved in the brand. There's also a concept which is known as brand volunteers, which means that you are co-creator of the entire environment that the brand is in, and Metaverse provides that particular environment. So the whole idea is that how that particular environment translates into that particular business proposition. That is very interesting, because if the user gets connected in the development and the co-creation of those movements, which we say in marketing, which is very important, the movement marketing, then I think you can tap into as the marketers and get the mileage out. That's how the ROI works. And here, the investments that the brands and the marketers are doing is quite less as compared to the advertising they used to do in the mass media. So with that, what are the consumer insights? So basically, as I told you, that it is about interactions, it is about, so this is very important and interesting area to think about is the virtual service encounters. Now, service encounters, we all know what it is, but what are the virtual spaces under which you create those service encounters and ensure that you are having a kind of a conversation with your consumer? I think that is where Metaverse helps a lot, because every time. Now, what has happened, honestly, in the digital space and digital users is that with all these transformations which has happened, the users have become very impatient. They can't wait. Okay, they want everything in real time. They don't care where you are, which part of the world, and all of that. So in this case, the virtual spaces and the virtual service encounters which you create 24/7, 365 days a year, I think that is something which people are looking for. And that leads to the tracking system, that leads to, you can monitor it, you can actually monetize and see what is working, what is not working. You can try out as marketers and provide the insights which people are using through the user behavior for the concept testing if you're developing a new product or developing a new service. And of course, these, as I was telling you, that in the metaverse world as well, what is happening is, even including me, when I was trained in marketing, it was a very linear pattern where we had the cognition, cognitive, and behavior. Now it doesn't work. If you do a concept testing, also you work on the personas, you understand the behavior of the user on metaverse, and then you say, okay, whether this product is going to make sense, not going to make sense, and how it is aligned to their lifestyle. I think that is something which is very important, because the user is very smart, very sophisticated, very knowledgeable. And if they feel that the brand and the products are not making sense and they are taking a lot of time, then they discard it. So it's a lot of information overloading, which they already go through every day. Just imagine the amount of information that we receive as users every day. It's humongous. And if you pour in more information, which is irrelevant, they just, sign out from the brand. So that is something where Metaverse really helps, and you can gain a lot of consumer insights from it. Now, here, what is the next thing is about how do you contribute to those values. And, you can do a lot of ethnographies. And these are something which is, again, going to affect the entire virtual behavior of the user. And now you would say that, Varsha, what about the real behavior? So let me tell you that there was another study which we conducted, which we found that the users now, and I think this was 10 years ago when I was working with Don, he actually predicted that, Varsha, in the future, nobody cares about what they are in the real world. What they care is about how they portray themselves, how they look, how they are perceived in the virtual setup, which is where Metaverse really helps. They can actually do what they want. And that is exactly what is happening now at the next level. Because now you will be saying that, why am I discussing? Because this is an opportunity to the marketer. Now, why the marketer would be interested if the users are not interested in the physical and the real world? They would go on Metaverse and enable those environments and create more lucrative environments which are in sync with the users. So that's very interesting dilemma to talk about. But Metaverse is something which people are getting into, and that's how you need to fix as marketers as well as the researchers and scholars. Now, the next point on the slide, which I wanted to highlight, is about the governance, ethical issues, privacy issues, which are very important. And as I was telling you that these are certain things which we have to all keep in mind as marketers, scholars, researchers as well, because the governance plays a very important role here. Now, you would say that, why are we discussing about governance and privacy and all these ethical issues? Because we did another, piece on brand co-governance, and it was contextualized into Metaverse. And what we found is that it is the responsibility of the user, it is the responsibility of the channel member, brand, and all together creates that governance part, which is very important when you're dealing with technologies like Metaverse, because you cannot just say one particular stakeholder that this person or the brand or the marketer is responsible. No, the kind of uses that the user are doing, the kind of channels that you're using, everything matters here. So it's very interesting part to discuss about and then to work about. Now in consumer behavior, and that's what I think we are focusing in the JCB special issue on Metaverse, is how people are adapting, how it is affecting the well-being of the consumer. Now, this is very important because whatever we do in the world, it should not affect the consumer well-being. So when I talk about consumer well-being itself in Metaverse, it's very complicated construct, let me tell you, because it covers, economic well-being, subjective well-being, emotive well-being, everything in it. And it becomes very multidisciplinary because as a brand, as a marketer, when I'm on Metaverse, I have to ensure that the consumer well-being is being taken care of, because if you do not, they won't come back. And there's a lot of changes which is happening in terms of their perceptions, their behavior, and ultimately what they want is the co-creation, because you need to provide as marketers a lot of avenues where they can talk about and discuss, and that's where it is coming out. And with that, let me just play one video. I think that would help you to understand what I'm talking about.
Welcome Semblance, the fashion's entry to the metaverse. Let your audiences immerse themselves with your brand like never before. Explore your product offering, engage with your brand stories for the season, and interact with unique touchpoints. It allows for brands to celebrate their own identity, all powered by advanced technology and inspired gamification. The future of brands, new generation solutions, and gamification is here.
The Semblance is another avenue where it provides a technology-oriented environment in Metaverse where consumers can actually discuss, share, and do all the activities they want to. So in terms of the academic organizations and what we have done in the CB area, these are some of the snapshots which I have taken from our publications and the work that we've been doing about. So it is a metaverse environment under which the user is working. There's a technology and there are social elements. Now, if you see, the social elements are also connected to the decision making. And what is transformed into the entire segment of marketing is how people process information and how do they make the decisions. So now that is equally important because you're making the decision with stimulus, which is multisensory avenues that you provide in Metaverse. I think that is something which is going to make transformation completely in the decision-making process and how information is being processed by the users. So the whole idea is, again, we're doing another round of study with one of my colleagues at IIT, and we're running field experiments to understand that what type of different sensors which you see here is actually working into the multisensory aspect of Metaverse and how that they connect with different kind of products with an understanding about whether it is men, women, or any other demographic that we talk about, because that has a significant influence and impact on marketers. And that's how they would make the investments. So here we again talk about design thinking, and it is about the user interface that you provide on Metaverse. If it is really easy, it's very good for the user to get in, and it is where you get the mileage. But if it is complicated and, they have to follow a lot of steps to get in, they're out. Because, any complex situation which has been given to the human being, specifically Generation Y, what we have found is that they just go away from it. And the reason is that because the processing of the mind, which is where we come up with System 1 and System 2 theory, which talks about how the decision-making has been taken care by the users, then in that case, they are actually not using their minds, but actually they want the technology to help them, to enable them to make the decisions. So what we found over there in that research was also that System 2 is not working, but they have a proxy System 2. In this case, the proxy would be Metaverse. So they need proxies like social media, they need friends, they need social media influencers, they need metaverse in order to enable the decision-making process, which also leads to another argument. It says that they are not using their cognition, they are not using their mind in decision-making process, which is really scary, because as individuals, as human beings, if you're not taking your decision by yourself, then that's where it scares us as a techno social scientist. So that is the whole idea of consumer behavior and metaverse. And then again, there are a lot of different type of, as I mentioned, the negative and the positive motives which are there. Now, in digital marketing, primarily the metaverse works into the communities, and that is something which is the social presence, which I was talking about. How do they connect with NFTs? How the NFT buyers and creators are developed, and how it connects with the human influencers and virtual influencers. Now, that is something which is quite interesting, because a lot of people in the world, including the US, they feel that influencers, when they are virtual, we also call them as social robots, they actually work very well because they don't have judgments. Human influencers to judge us, which they don't like, and they can shut them off, they can drive them the way they want. So again, there are two aspects for it. One is that, okay, they can actually have control on the influencers because they can set it up by themselves and they can run it. And that's how the technology works. But the other side, the darker side, is that you are so much immersed into technology that you actually do not know how to interact in a human-driven world, which is again scary, because we don't want to be driven by the bots. Though we make the bots, we need to have the control on the bots. So that is something which is an ongoing, issue which is there in the world. And I was again in the US, I spend like 2 months every year. Every time you and at AMA, we discuss about this, and this is something which is very important aspects, including the metaverse, that where are we heading as human community? So in digital marketing, as I was telling you earlier, the segmentation has changed. It's not about the earlier traditional way of segmenting the market, but it's all about the user's persona, user's behavior, which we went to identify while using AI, put it into the metaverse and provide them the experience which they are looking for. And they are very much immersed into it, along with whatever games they want to play. So just to give you an example and a context, I have a friend in the US, and he actually told me that, okay, I have to leave now and I have to do something. So I said, what do you want to do? And he said, I want to feed my cow. I said, where is it? And he said that is in the metaverse, it's in the digital format. And so I said, why are you so curious to do that? And he said, no, I'm very particular about it. That's my world which I live in. And that is something which is very different, because in the real world, people were talking about it, but it's not about the real world. Now people are talking about metaverse and how they're connecting themselves so much that they want to get away from the real world. So that is something which is the future of it. Now, in the advertising space, it's a complete transformation. It's a complete transformation with virtual communities. It's about the interactivity, as I was talking about. It's about the senses that you can provide those sensory advertising and marketing to the people, like Tiffany is doing it, like other brands are doing it. And in virtual communities, one of my doctoral student is working, and what she is finding out is, even for sustainability, the virtual communities plays an important role. And even with my Australian team, we're working on how the place branding, the content is created into those virtual communities, including the metaverse, and how it can transform the entire orientation about the co-created experience world with all the stakeholders, because that is something which is taking every place even to a different world in advertising. So let me show you this KFC bit of it, which will actually tell you that how different brands are using metaverse. So the whole idea is, and you might be seeing that this KFC is not in India, but in China. And why? The reason is that in the entire world, the most technologically savvy market is the Chinese market. It's far ahead of the UK, it's far ahead of the US, and they are into a different leap of technology altogether. Because the way they use technology is just amazing and incredible, because the WeChats, the kind of payment systems, the kind of connections with the brands, it's all about technology. So I think the whole idea of metaverse also works very well in the Chinese market, which you have seen for KFC. So besides that, we talk about the sensory elements, there are brand equity elements, there are a lot of elements that are connected with the stories of the brands and the tactic environment under which the brands are living. So probably it could be short-term objectives that the brands want to acquire. That is also through metaverse. And I mentioned about brand equity because that involves everything, which starting from your brand awareness, then your brand recall, brand loyalty, brand perceived quality, everything. So whole idea is that how do I portray the brand on metaverse? I think that is something which is very interesting, and we'll see how it is panning out. Now, besides that, in services, what is important and what is transforming in the entire sector of services is the quality part of it, experience part of it, and the automation part of it. So, for example, we did some studies in emerging markets, and we found that if you do complete automation, it is not going to help the brand because they want human interaction as well. But if you provide that human interaction in countries like the US and the UK, which is very individualistic in nature, they feel offended because they feel that I can do it by myself. And why do I need you? I don't need a human support because I'm knowledgeable enough. So the whole point is that the cultures plays a very important role in determining what is the level of automation and robotics that I'm using in providing the services. And that also leads to the innovation. And then again, we have a lot of discussion on high-tech and low-tech cultures while dehumanizing or humanizing the technologies while you're offering the services. So again, the whole point is that how much is where you play the threshold and you say, yes, this is what it is. For example, if you talk about Disney, they provide really good output and experience which is there for the user. For example, when you are at Disney, you actually just get a band, you just tap in, which I've seen at Orlando, and I'm sure that they might be doing at different places in Hong Kong and Paris as well. And with one tap, it's all done. So whole idea of using metaverse and automation and technology is how do I connect with the pain point of the users and the consumers and provide them a solution instead of talking about the marketing aspects of services. I think this is something which is a turmoil in the entire marketing discipline. It's not about me as a brand talking and bragging about it that I am great. No, it is about understanding the cultural nuances, social nuances, and then probably identifying the pain points of the users, and then through your metaverse and automation and AI, providing the solutions to the users. That is what they admire the marketers to be. And that's the future. That's what we are talking about in purpose-driven businesses as well, because it's not going to be about how much you are offering. It is like, how much value do you offer to the user? That is going to decide that how much you're going to create an impact on them. So again, in the services sector, there are a lot of sharing of platforms. It's about scalability. It's about the quality improvement, which you are doing with a digital space, including Metaverse, where your entities are important. But it is also about how you are managing those activities and turning them up. This is the last part which I wanted to cover, because I'm keeping a track of the time. We have like 7 to 8 minutes, which is where I'll do my concluding remarks and talk about the hospitality and tourism. And why I'm talking about it in the marketing front, because this is one of the area which actually have picked up very widely, primarily during COVID and after COVID. The reason is that because all of us were suppressed or to travel, to visit different places, and technology like Metaverse help us to have those experiences while you are at one place, which makes a lot of sense. That is why I was mentioning about the vicarious pleasure. And there are a lot of studies which has happened, and we also conducted some studies in hospitality and tourism. And what we found is that if you provide the metaverse environment through the field experiments that we have conducted, then it translates into the actual visit to those places and the hotels that you're talking about, which is great transformation in terms of the businesses. And that is where the user get immersed into it. The technologies are immersed. You can actually build up the products and services that are aligned with the personalized services. And then you can actually connect with them in the real world, which is what I was talking about. And the other thing which is also important is about the real-time feedback with the users keep giving, because that's where the entire metaverse works into. And in the real-time feedback, you can actually talk to the brand and discuss and talk about your own views, and you can capture your emotions while you are in metaverse, because that is where in my previous slide, as you've seen, we capture the consumer insights, which help us to improvise the product and services in metaverse constantly. So that is something which is very interesting. And then before the physical visit, during, after, if you see, it can be 3 stages under which you can work. You can talk about the services which you were not able to visit. Then you can talk about the environment under which you are working with the games that we've discussed. During the visit, a lot of technologies can be used. So for example, even in the US, besides the hospitality, it is the entire retail which has changed. It is not about the store. Now we're talking about the studios. Now, what is a studio? It's all about metaverse. It's all about technology. And then what you are doing as a marketer, you're enabling that environment, ensuring that people go through those kind of experiences, and you're enabling those technological touch points which engage them into the kind of experience they are looking for. And even most of the marketing transaction ends that, okay, my deal is done and I'm done with you, which is not a right form, because most of the brands there are in the world which talks about, like Harley, they will say, no, this is the beginning of a new journey. This is where the intersection happens. This is where it's not about transaction, but it's about the community development. Now, why I'm discussing that? Because that plays an important role in metaverse, because you can be always connected with those people. And that is something which is very important. You have to reiterate as a brand, as a marketer, that I am there and I'm listening, because that is something which is very much appreciated by the consumers. And you have to reconnect with them. You have to, even for the places and destinations and hospitality, it's not that once the person has gone and then you just say, do not share anything. But for example, Hilton, for example, other brands in the world like Marriott, they always keep a certain type of memories with them. They have accumulated all the details. If you've stayed with them, they'll always get connected, for example, even on your birthdays and all the cards. Again, all these entire transformation that we see in Metaverse can be used in order to connect, reconnect, and provide better experiences and memories to the people. Even when I was talking about Disney, Disney always captures the moment when you are in the ride and you are at the top, and then the way you react, they capture it and they give it back. And that's how it comes from the Metaverse, which is personalized version of it. And the whole experience that they create is just incredible. And that is something which has immersed themselves in providing better services to the users. So I think in tourism and hospitality also, it plays a very important role. Like, how do you create those characters? Now we are talking about Barbie. You look at the pink and then you associate with Barbie. There's a Barbie world and there's a real world and there is a meta world. So how do I connect? How do I even understand that what is going on? I think that is a very interesting phase to understand and to leverage that particular area and the spot as a marketer. Now, within hospitality and tourism, there are different ways, as I was talking about, real to virtual and then virtual to virtual maybe, and how it plays an important role in hospitality sector, because now we're talking about cloud kitchen, when you're talking about the virtual hotels, now we're talking about different type of segments that we are into. And we are also talking about the different type of ecosystem where we include sustainability as a major component. So I think the whole idea is there's a lot of transformations within the business model itself, where the business model, when I was doing one study on the global CTOs, CMOs in the world, it's published in JBL, and it was about the services. And they said that, you know what, the future which is there on the board that is going to sit with us is AI and Metaverse. Because as a conventional business also, for example, I was talking to one of the board member in the textile business, and she said that the whole idea is about investment that we are going to do in AI and Metaverse. That is going to decide whether we are going to succeed, whether we are going to survive even in the competition, or we are going to be there to be seen in the business. Just imagine a brand that is part, which is Aditya Birla Group, a big group in India, and they are talking about it, which means the conventional businesses as well are going to make transformations, which they are already doing, but the bigger transformations in terms of Metaverse and AI, because that's the whole idea. That's going to give you the personalized services. So that's the whole point. Now, the Metaverse and, is present, and there are a lot of opportunities for research. So let me conclude by saying that, Metaverse, as I said at the beginning also, has two parts of it. So one part is what is the brighter part, one part is what is the darker part. And is that the Gen Z who are more on Metaverse, because we get a lot of reports every day to say that this is working and this is not working. People are adapting, but they are using, and it is just creating the awareness, and it is only for the millennials. And after that, it is not going anywhere. Are we wanting that to happen? Because a lot of brands, they say that, there's a lot of exposure which is there. So people who are not aware about the brand, they are going to be aware about it. And in the end, once they get into that immersion, then they probably get into that. Similarly, even, for example, Louis Vuitton or Gucci, as I was mentioning, when they are using $5 experiences with those brands, I think none of the consumer in the world can afford those brands into those prices which they're getting on Metaverse. Of course, they don't care about the real world. They are into the virtual world. The whole idea is that what is real and what is virtual and what is Metaverse? I think that is something which is quite interesting questions to be asked as researchers, because it's, for me, if you ask me, it's like amalgamation of all. And why? Because the user is in all the worlds. We have not gone away from the real world. We are still in the real world. We are also in the virtual world. We are also in meta world. And we also want to make, digital footprints everywhere. And the whole idea is that where do you have this identity? Is that on the meta world, which you want to create an avatar and personalize it, but in the real world as well. And the whole dilemma is that another set of perspective is that a crisis which an individual and a user is going through. So as a marketer, can I help and support that person? That, okay, in the online identity, if you're going to address something now, the entire debate about the gender is fluid is going on, which is where the whole ideology changes are happening. And I think it is reflected even on Metaverse. So the whole idea is, as a brand, how can I help the consumers and the users? So my concluding remarks is that as a marketer, as a researcher, as scholars, if you can identify those pain points and the problems and the issues which are there, addresses with your research, understand what are the strategies which you can formulate, you will have a better impact. It's not only a paper, but a social impact that the entire world is talking about, including marketing discipline, to say that, okay, this is where I have found the solution for the concerns that were raised in Metaverse. So I think with that, my time is up, and thank you so much for being so kind and patient. And I'll be happy to take the questions if there are any.
Thank you so much, Professor Varsha. It was really incredible and very insightful talk. And thank you for sharing the bright and the dark side of Metaverse, and also, a very comprehensive, I would say, research agenda. So before I invite Professor Anabel, so how we can visualize, KPIs will change in the Metaverse, or where do you think this Metaverse fits into consumer decision making journey? So I was very curious to ask you before we take questions.
Sure. Thank you so much for that question. I think it's very much relevant and important. So when you talk about the KPIs, it is more about, I set up the objective as a marketing objective to say that, okay, what am I expecting from the meta world? I'm not expecting, always the sales, maybe. I'm expecting awareness. So depending upon my product life cycle and brand life cycle and what I intend to do in the meta world, I think then I decide my KPIs. So it's very customized basis, the products and the brands and the services that I spoke about. And in terms of the consumer decision making, I think the metaverse has more expedited the decision making, I would say, because the brands which we're not aware about, they are getting aware, and the vicarious pleasure which I was mentioning about, which was not reflected earlier, is given by Metaverse. So what happens is that when you have vicarious pleasure, that you saw the video which I just played for KFC and other brands, I'm sure McDonald's is doing it, every brand in the world is doing it. Then in that case, what happens is that if the meta world is already imbibed in my memory, then I work with my long-term memory. My decay effect reduces. That's the whole idea of any marketer and a brand, that people should remember what I'm talking about. So that's how it has expedited the decision-making, because my content becomes relevant, personalized, and contextual.
Right. Thank you so much. Professor Yogesh joined, and he has to leave because of a meeting, so he conveyed his warm regards to you and also apologies for leaving the meeting. So with your kind permission, I would like to invite now Dr. Anabel, who will take Q&A, which are already there from the audience. Professor Anabel, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Varsha, for your presentation. It was very insightful how you put the insight into connections between marketing and all these opportunities and challenges of the metaverse, and especially at the end in your concluding remarks, the fact that we are in a crucial stage of identifying how consumers will be impacted by this. So we have a huge responsibility to really understand the impact of introducing this while we are creating the metaverse. And I want to start with the questions. We have plenty, and I have many, but let me start with our the questions that we have in the chat at the moment. And the first one that we have is how do you run experiments for the research in the metaverse that are publishable? So that's and this is very specific to metaverse advertisement. So that's the question here. What are the type of experiments that are expected to be able to publish this research?
Sure. So thank you so much for that question. I think I'll refer it back to my own journal jar. And there, when you're talking about the experiments that you want to run in the advertising space, it could be a real-time experience, it could be a field experiment. And the whole idea is that there are a lot of meta world labs which are being created in the world. And people do a lot of lab experiments. The project that I was referring to, my co-authors actually did the lab experiments to figure out, and why I'm emphasizing, because in the meta world, we are at the concept testing stage. So we really don't know that what is going to work. So you have to run a lot of experiments and a lot of pre-tests in the lab before you go to the actual field and run it in the meta world. Because what happens is that you have to invest a lot of time and resources. So instead of that, what we do is we do a lot of pre-test, and that is publishable even at JAR, when you are actually running the lab experiments. And then from the lab experiments, the constructs and the relationship which are significant, you run it in the field experiments in the meta lab, of course. So that's how the methodology becomes robust.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting, and especially to start linking the specific aspects of the consumer behavior that you want to discover, and the case uses that are relevant to start building up. So that's very good. Thank you for that answer. And we have another question that is related to the consumer. So it says that is related to, do consumers in the metaverse perceive the other avatars as humans beings?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, this is a very interesting question, which is what I was saying, that there are two perspectives from our own work, which is that the human who are there on the metaverse and they make their avatars. So there's one set of demography which says that whatever I'm not able to fulfill my desire, I go on metaverse and make the avatars of it, which is where these are those set of people who are being suppressed by their basic needs, specifically in terms of their identity and expression. And there are people on the other side, like Gen Y, where they are freely expressing their views and they are able to express what they are in terms of their thought processes. So they are basically the humans. So both set of demography I spoke about is available for the avatars which they create on Meta World.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And actually, we can learn a lot about the consumers' perceptions about identity that had happened in social media. We have a lot of positive aspects that social media allows you to express yourself, but also we have a lot of harm that has been done around these issues of well-being. So yes, I think that question was has to start looking into those two perspectives very, very in more detail. And you mentioned that before, the psychological aspect of this, because in the long term, this is transforming how we communicate, how we interact. And we have observed already this with social media. And now we are coming to a new set of environments that are actually very, very dramatic transformations of how we interact. So yes, that's very interesting. There is another question around where conference. Okay, but I believe you have already mentioned that. But if you want to just highlight which conference, events, workshops you advise to go and do more virtual research, more research on this.
So in the marketing area, I think most of the leading conferences that we have is AMA, Academy of Marketing Science, AMS, EMAC, all the conferences, I would say these are top tier 3 conferences that are there. Besides that, we have ACR, we have Asia Pacific SER. And all the conferences, I would say, to my understanding, is about the metaverse. And initially, we used to get a lot of submissions into the different tracks. And I remember still social media and digital was not so much 10 years ago, but now we have segregations into digital and social media tracks. Even 2 tractors are not even sufficient because there are so many submissions that comes at these conferences, which talks about metaverse and AI and VR and mixed reality, that we need to have separate tracks for all these conferences in the 3 leading conferences that I spoke about. So I think there's a lot of changes which has happened and a lot of research is happening into that area. And all the 3-4 conferences which I mentioned is looking forward for those papers.
Yeah, I think that is one of the things that we are facing, not the lack of spaces to talk about this, but actually there are so many opportunities and options for discussion. So thank you very much. And there is an interesting question here that is around the co-creation in the metaverse. And the person here is asking how brands could co-create in the metaverse, which I think is actually very, very interesting in order to start generating these use cases that will allow us to have better interactions and not only promote consumerism, but actually create interactions that enhance the social corporate responsibility of brands for all the big issues we have in society. So yeah, so what will be your view on that?
Sure. Thank you so much for mentioning that and setting up the context, because as I mentioned earlier as well, the co-creation of the experiences that happens with the brand and the user is also, as you mentioned, it about the CSR, but I go beyond it, which says that it is the social programs which are being talking about what are the pain points of the consumers that you are interacting about in the meta world as well, and then how you are addressing to them as a brand. I think that is going to change the entire marketing paradigm, because it's not about presence of a brand or a product in the meta world, but how you are engaging in gamification, how you are involving them. As I mentioned about the concept of brand volunteers, I think it works very well in meta world as well, because brand volunteers are those people and the users who are actually helping and taking the extra time and efforts to help the brand. For example, they do it for Apple, they do it for Harley, and Hog is a very interesting community that we can discuss about. And it is on Meta World, and it is talking about it because how these communities can be developed, how they actually take oath, and they are so much close to the product and the brand that they even forget about their near and dear ones sometimes. So that's the whole idea of getting immersed and co-creating with the brands. And this can only happen if I bring in my CB expertise. It's about the habituated behavior, which every brand wants, which means that I get so much habituated. For example, early in the morning, I remember that a lot of people just look for some newspapers, which they wanted to have it in their hands. And now it's about the apps. So you go on the app and a lot of people do share trading and they want to see the share prices every day. So the formats and the channels have changed, but you are habituated to it. You need a coffee in the morning or a tea. That's a habitual behavior, which is where the brands comes in. And yesterday we were discussing about how Nescafe went to Japan, which was a very tea drinking market, and then how they transformed it with coffee candies, which is again coming into the metaverse and changing the entire paradigm of kids and teenagers. So it's a very interesting space to co-create with the users.
Yeah, and I think that that's also a very good opportunity for sharing and collaborating across the different supply chains that are involved in the tourism industry, in the fashion industry, because there is a lack of spaces for where people can start co-creating and identifying real needs, real problems, and solving them together. So that's very interesting. And I just want to elaborate before I go to the next questions a little bit on this from the perspective of the environmental challenges and sustainability challenges that we are facing. Because for one side, I'm just saying, yes, those metaverse spaces to collaborate sounds very exciting. But at the same time, we are creating and developing technologies that are very much energy consumption, and that they are demanding a lot of resources to being developed. So what is your position around the sustainability of developing these environments?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question that you have asked, and I was smiling because I got the same question when I was presenting to the UK faculty a week ago when we were discussing about metaverse. So the whole idea is, so there are two perspectives, and as a researcher, I never present my biased view because anything in this world has a darker side and the brighter side. So let's start with the brighter side. Brighter side of sustainability and metaverse in technology is that, we're talking, so most part of the world, specifically the US and the UK, I would quote those markets, there the problem is not about acquiring the products. So in consumer behavior, we have developed a ABCD model, which talks about acquiring, buying, and consuming and disposing. Their problem is not about acquiring and buying. Their problem is, how do I dispose them? I have enough going on. So why I'm telling that framework? Because in metaverse, I do vicarious pleasure. I don't care about disposing the products, right? So that is another aspect of sustainability, which is quite interesting in the meta world. And I don't have to worry about where I'm going to keep the product and where I'm going to dispose it later after consuming, which is the biggest challenge in these markets. So that I take care of those aspects of sustainability. Now I go to the the darker side of it, which says that sustainability is important, but then there are different ways under which you can take care of that, and how does metaverse would help. Because again, in metaverse, you would say that, okay, you have the vicarious pleasure, but you don't have the real pleasure of acquiring these products and consuming it. So again, sustainability plays a very important role, and we're doing some bunch of studies in the UK market to understand that how the trash which has been shown in the 3D effect of meta world, how that is having an impact on their actual behavior, which is again relating to the question of your sustainability. And what is interesting, what we have found there is that when you are into the meta world and showing them the entire issue that circles around sustainability, there is an actual behavior change which we measured. So that is something which is quite interesting if you use the technology strategically to change the behavior of the people. But again, it has dual sorts. It again depends upon the brands and the usage part of it. But if you do it right, for example, Coca-Cola, they've done a tremendous work in terms of sustainability and plastic usage and making aware of the people about it. I think those are the brands where they understand the meta world, they understand technology, they understand sustainability, and they'll make entire impact on the society.
Yes, that's very interesting. And well, we have a lot of work to find out the best use cases to actually start developing all these experiments and find how to improve not only the brand's reputation, but also the social impact these solutions will have. Thank you very much for that. And let me just continue with the questions. We have plenty. And another one is about which industries do you think are currently already the most exciting for the metaverse. I think you mentioned the tourism and you mentioned the all on the fashion industry, but apart from those, any other industries that you may think?
Sure. So I think this is a very interesting question again. But if you ask me what are the top industries that are working, it's primarily fashion and lifestyle. Tourism and hospitality is there, but the kind of usage which is happening is more about fashion and lifestyle. And I'm quoting this because before this session only, I was meeting my global team in the UK, and we were discussing about that what are the areas under which Meta is actually emerging extensively. So we figured out through the reports and the brands which have been listed worldwide that it is primarily fashion and lifestyle. I'm not saying others are not, but these are too prominent.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's very exciting, actually, what is going on in all this sector. From brand perspective and from sustainability perspective, it's just amazing how you can start matching all these aspects. So thank you very much for that. So let me go in now with the there are many thank you messages to you for a wonderful presentation. And I think pretty much those are the questions we have in the chat. I will check again next, but meanwhile, I have another question for you, because I think you put a very interesting insight into the privacy issues that the metaverse bring for consumers. We already are very cautious about how much data we are providing in the current systems and the social media systems. And there is a big change that is happening around advertising, even for how we are collecting data. And this is dramatically changing. And now we are thinking, okay, and what is going to happen now with the metaverse? So what is your view on the privacy and ethical issues around this data collection and privacy aspects?
Sure. So I think thank you so much for this question, because it is more related to the responsive metaverse, I would say, how responsive AI is, and it can be made by the brands, because you are, as I said, that, governance part, which I was explaining about, what is a threshold under which the personalization has to stop? And that has been decided by the user for the brand. It could vary from market to market, because some people are little not open to share their information, which should be respected by the brands. This is what we found in some of the studies that we've been doing globally. And some of the people are quite open, and they feel that everything that I do in the world is quite transparent, and I'm open to share the data. So the whole idea is it's a user empowerment. You empower them and let them decide that this is the level of data that should go in, and this is the level of data where we talk about opt-in and opt-out. This has been given by the user, because if the brands start deciding and the marketers start deciding, this is where the privacy issues are. So I still remember in the US, I was with my friend in Merck, and he said, well, don't discuss politics here, because it's a live transaction that is going to Merck, and they're going to use that data in different formats. So it's very scary at times when you are in your own cars and using the products, but you can't talk, because it's a live transaction which is happening. So it scares me sometimes. And, how much data has to go in, I think that is where it has to be the cap of the user, not of the brand. Because there are instances which we have seen that, people have used the different sorts of data, which is not good. Target has done that.
Absolutely. And actually, it's just super scary about reading the privacy policies and the actual practices that are happening in many organizations. And you mentioned something that I'm very curious, and maybe you can elaborate about that, because this is also about the type of regulations that the countries have and the cultural aspect. So you were mentioning, for example, that in China, they are having an amazing way of how they are using all these technologies. But we know that in there, the system is very authoritarian, and hence there is no, citizens don't have this concept as we have in other countries about the privacy. Well, what privacy? We have to disclose everything. So that is key difference between many cultures, that type of governments and type of regulations that combine makes this a very complex aspect.
I agree with you, because I think what you have added is the geopolitical aspect of it, which I think is a macro level factor. Besides the user aspects, which I spoke about, the social and the cultural aspect, there is a geopolitical aspects to every user that, we are talking about, whether it is from China or the US or Korea. Or any part of the world, you have to follow those norms, and those are the governance norms under which the users have to operate, because they're part of that particular geographical location as the user when they are operating. So I completely agree with you, but I do not touch those parts because those are little sensitive areas to talk about. But yes, at a macro level, it plays a significant role, because you determine the laws and the governance around my usage pattern, which again spans out in the metaverse, that how will I span out into those worlds as well? How much expression of freedom do I have as a user? So that plays a very significant role. And the other thing which you mentioned about the sustainability, but I just want to reiterate, is that we are talking about minimalistic consumption now.
Yeah.
So that is where again metaverse would help, because I don't want to see all those products in my house, but then I'm happy to have vicarious pleasure in the metaverse and then let go.
Absolutely.
So that's a mindset change completely.
Yeah, I think that's the key part of all the technologies, that you need to start looking into the technologies, not for the sake of the technology and to make money, but also, but the mindset should be at this moment to see how can I improve my services by introducing technologies that will reduce the carbon footprint, that will reduce the frictions, that will improve the consumer experience without adding more environmental issues to our daily life. So I think that's a mind frame set that hopefully we can start encouraging organizations and researchers to start focusing, that it's not just advertising more in the metaverse or having more products sold, but actually how we can start balancing that and provide more value to consumers or citizens. So yeah, very interesting, Dr. Varsha, and I really thank you for all your insight. It was very, very comprehensive, and I think we don't have any more questions. So the only thing for me is to say thank you very much, and going now to Vinod, Kumar, please, to close the session. Thank you.
Taking all the questions and very patiently answering all the questions, Professor Varsha Jain. And now we comes to concluding this session. So we would like to extend our sincere gratitude to Professor Varsha Jain for gracing the event with her valuable insights during this enlightening session. So I also want to express my heartfelt thanks to Professor Yogesh Kumar Dwivedi, Dr. Laurie Hughes, and Professor Raman for conceiving this idea of seminar series and providing us with this exceptional platform to discuss this theme of emerging perspective on the metaverse. Many thanks to Dr. Anabel for being there today as a moderator. So a special thanks to all our esteemed guests who joined us from various parts of the world, contributing to enriching discussions today. So lastly, I would like to express my appreciation for Mr. Rajesh and his team for unweaving IT support. so ensuring the smooth functioning of this entire event. So link for next seminar is already posted on the chat. So as we conclude our current gathering, I'm delighted to inform you all that the upcoming seminar is scheduled on 13th September 2023. We are honored to have Professor Emmanuel Moghaji from University of Greenwich, London, UK, who will be sharing his valuable insights on the topic advertising and media planning on the metaverse, a theoretical primer for advertising research and practice. So kindly make a note of this date on your calendars. Thank you all for your participation today. We eagerly anticipate your presence in the next seminars too. We wish you all a wonderful time ahead, all of you. Thank you very much once again, Professor Varsha, Dr. Anabel, and everyone. Thank you.